My question concerns date estimation and recording for archival materials. DASCs, which is Describing Archives, a Content Standard, sections 2.412 and 2.415 deal with estimated single dates and date ranges, but don't provide much guidance beyond being clear and consistent. I'm smiling because so much of our best practices is a it depends situation. Are there any widely recognized conventions within the archival community concerning the range of uncertainty? So, for example, circa 1950 means 1940 to 1960. Approximately 1922 means 1920 to 1924, etc. 1890s does seem pretty obvious, and I do agree with that one. One possibility, not explicitly mentioned in DAX, but that covers a lot of railroad photographs, would be mid 20th century. Any problem with that because it's not a DAX estimated format. So the word circa is Latin for about. So it's in and of itself is the estimate. And in looking at some of the other best practices that I've seen out there, the consensus seems to be that when we're doing a circa for a decade, doing the 1940 to 1949 versus 1940 to 1950, this tends to be the preferred 40 to 49 and then like 50 to 59, etc. for that decade. You are correct. You could also then just do 1940s if you want it to be 1940 to 1949. I believe our preference as archivists is with the circa, and I believe that's what the DAX manual predominantly uses. Getting into 1922, so we're moving from a decade to within that year. This tends to mean like we feel really good about it being 1922, but it could conceivably be 1 year less or more. So 1921, 1923. So that is the sort of the insinuation with that sort of date. Mid 19th century, if you're trying to hit like the 40s and the 50s, it certainly as a historian that is accurate. The question is, and what I get into in this next bullet point though, is what is the date for? And if you're getting into DAX and if you're working on the project that I think you're working on, then the date is for a catalog, and the catalog is intended to be searched and do some drilled down with dates maybe. And so when you use a more narrative format or textual versus alphabetical versus numerical, then it's going to make it harder to search. And so if this is a database driven decision for things that we would like to be findable, stick with numbers as best as you can. So in this case, for this very particular situation, when you're wanting to say something is mid 19th century, I would have you stick with the decade if you can get it down to a decade. So either doing that circa 40 to 49 or just 1940s, whichever way your system prefers that or works best with is what I would recommend. So hopefully that makes sense. That as you could tell, there's no like hard or fast rule, but if you're doing this for a database, stick with numbers, but any of these combinations are technically correct. So you can't go wrong there.